Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming today. My name is Nick Pook. This is Chris Roberts, this is Kyle Saunders. We're the three from the MAGD capstone class, 487 and 488, that organized the event. The idea of the event was that we want to showcase what faculty are doing outside of the classroom. So it's not just a regular class, it's case studies they've worked on, projects they've been parts of, research they've done, things like that. And I have worked with the College of Business all 4 years of my college career, so that was kind of how the partnership got started here. So before we get going on everything, we got a couple people the three of us that we want to thank, and then we'll jump into and get these talks going. So,
cool. All right, like you said, I'm Chris. First, we'd like to thank our professor, Josh Fishburne. Being multimedia arts and game development, this isn't the kind of project he gets that comes across his desk every day, and he's been nothing but supportive the whole time, and we really appreciate it.
And another person we want to thank is John Kelly. He's not out here right now, but he's helping right now, but basically he helped pretty much everything. He helped with the logo design, with feedback. He helped with all the sound, all the cameras, the lighting, pretty much everything you see out here. He helped organize, but at the same time, he let us kind of guided ourselves without just telling us like, oh, this is how it should be done. So we want to thank him as well.
And the last person we want to thank is Jolene Check. In the whole process of all this, I was up in her office almost every day. We were doing questions back and forth, and she was really helpful. I also want to thank these guys for helping out. The project is my idea, but they've been a huge help. And I want to thank all of the crew and everyone that's here behind the scenes doing everything, and everyone that was here yesterday helping set everything up, and all that. So before we introduce Dr. Chenoweth, if you like what you're seeing, you can tweet using the hashtag CoBE Talks. Little social media plug there. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Dr. Chenoweth, who is the Dean of the College of Business.
Well, good morning. I have such a booming voice up here. Welcome to the Timothy J. Highland Hall, the home of our fabulous College of Business and Economics. Today you're going to get a small taste of the exceptional work that our faculty do. I just wanted to give you a brief intro to the college. Our college consists of about 110 faculty and staff. We work with about 4,000, more than 4,000 students in our bachelor's programs, master's programs, and our doctoral program. And a couple of things that we're proud of in the college. One is we have exceptional student organizations. Award-winning, we win International Chapter of the Year for AMA. Chotan, our host today, just got back from taking students to Enactus, where they won second place in the quarterfinals, had a fabulous experience, students getting job offers while they're there, all sorts of exciting things. And then the other thing that you sort of get a sense of today as well is the technology that we have. We have fabulous technology support staff as well as our online programs, our online BBA and our online MBA. And so that's just a small sense of what the college is and what the college does. And I'm going to turn it over to Chotan Basu, who is going to serve as our host for today's program and is the Irving L. Young Professor of Entrepreneurship.
Thanks, John. Welcome. First CoBE Talks in the beautiful Highland Hall. You get to hear some amazing speakers. To start off, we got two speakers, Bill Dugan and Dave G. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on them. I have a little write-up on them. I don't need it. They're amazing, okay? So Irvin L. Young, Chair of Entrepreneurship, I took that over, but Dugan had that for 6 years, and he led lots of entrepreneurship programs on campus, helping students launch their businesses, do incredible things on campus. Dave G. joined us last year and started providing the pragmatic side of things and giving them guidance. And together they've launched a program where you have all around the country people talking about our program. So we are actually best practices with some of the top entrepreneurship programs in the country. Dugan teaches in the management area. He works with lots of entrepreneurial organizations in the state. He judges the governor's business plan competition. And Dave has now taken the Launchpad, which is our premier student incubator program, and taken it to a different level. I asked them, give me something quirky about each of you. And Dugan said, he taught ice climbing when he was in grad school. So that's something else we can do. And Dave, his passion is home brewing, beer, right? And also mountain biking. So I give you Dave G. and Bill Dugan.
Thanks, Shotan. And so what do you get when you put, you know, ice climbing and beer brewing together, right? That's a great thing, right? You get entrepreneurship, I guess. We're here to talk to you about the rise of the student entrepreneur and to talk a little bit, sort of an advertisement, about the kind of programs that we have available at the university and how we're sort of addressing things that are going on, sort of trends in terms of labor market trends, employment trends, business startup trends, and how you know, the university has come to deal with that. As Shotan said, I'm Dugan, and
I'm G.
And here we go. So one of the things that we're going to lead off with, and we're sort of lead-off hitters in the lead-off show here, is that there's an extraordinary rise in terms of the inclination of millennials to start their own businesses. The degree to which, or the rate to which millennials will start these businesses has just exploded in the last 15, 20 years. And so the question is why? And I'm going to tell you a story that's kind of a labor market story, but also a story about what's going on in the general economy. Think of what role does a university have? Well, traditionally, universities were socializers of human capital so that they could take positions in sort of the middle and upper part of organizations. If you think of an organization as kind of a pyramid-shaped layer cake, right? You kind of have operatives at the bottom. Those are the folks that drive the trucks and enter the data and answer the phones. And then you have a kind of a middle layer. Those are people that process the information, traditionally, that was created by the operatives. And then you have a sort of smaller piece at the top of the cake, which are individuals that have sort of strategic and visionary control over everything that's going on in the cake. And, you know, organizations, you know, this sort of industrialization started, you know, you could argue way back into the 17th century, but certainly the size of organizations exploded in the 20th century because of the mechanization and the sort of industrialization of the lower part of that cake, right? You get a substitution of individuals working on their own by machines, and so you were able to produce at a much higher scale than you were previously. And what happened with the invention of the computer is that industrialization started rolling up the layer cake, right? Now, if you're an institution that socializes people to, you know, to take a position in the middle part of that cake, that means you got a little bit of a problem, right? The problem is that what used to happen in the middle of the cake now happens in a box in the corner. Right? And so what do you do as a kind of a second act in terms of socializing people to take these roles? You could socialize them then to take the role at the top of the organization, right? And that started happening. In fact, what has started to happen is that the same computing technology that replaced all those folks in the middle of the cake is now enabling individuals that are in the middle of the cake to start their own organizations, right? You've got LegalZoom to help you with legal stuff. You've got Google Metrics to help you with market research related stuff. You've got operational programs that help you with operations stuff. And so it means that in some sense, an individual who's predisposed to start their own business can amplify their efforts through software to do startups, right? And so that's what started to happen. And what started to happen all over the country is that more and more organizations, more and more universities have started to offer entrepreneurship courses and entrepreneurship programs. This institution was relatively early. Whitewater is relatively early in terms of offering this. But even 15, 20 years ago when I started, only a fraction of universities offered programs. Now you have 2,000 institutions out of approximately 4,500, 5,000 institutions in the United States are offering entrepreneurship programs. Why? Because they understand that they have to serve the needs of individuals that want to go out and start their own organizations. So We now have created programs inside this institution to take care of that. And Dave's going to tell you a little bit about the specifics of Launchpad, but we have created a means by which anyone who's interested in starting their own organization to kind of get an education in immersion, a practical sort of experience, to try to test out what it's like to be an entrepreneur. And we put together all sorts of curriculum to aid that as well. Here's a little story about the process. We have ideation, getting the idea. Then we have a whole series of classroom resources, specialized courses that help you to start your own business. We have lots of extracurricular activities. John just referred to the Enactus organization. We work at an organization called the Collegiate Entrepreneurs Organization, and there are lots and lots of business plan contests that are present now that weren't present previously that we've started to do. We have our own separate space to create the housing for entrepreneurs and to expose entrepreneurs sort of a foot inside as well as outside the institution. And then lots of external resources, access to angel funding, access to legal assistance, access to expert subject matter folks. And finally, the notion is that you roll through all these resources and you end up with a startup. Now, sometimes it doesn't work, right? And so then the opportunities are there for you to cycle back if you don't get good feedback on your idea. So I've gone a little bit long, but I'm now going to turn it over to Dave, who's going to talk a little bit about the specifics of the program.
So with our Launchpad program, it's a student startup accelerator, and we talk about our mission being educating primarily, but then we talk about acceleration and inspiration as well. And so it becomes a lab where students can actually bring forth an idea, they pitch, and then we provide them entry into the Launchpad program. It's a one-semester program. We have weekly training sessions, roundtables, one-on-ones, etc. And what we're starting to do is take a look at the distribution of these startups and where they're landing. Our initial presumption was, well, students are most exposed to consumer products, so they're probably going to land there. But some interesting things have actually started to happen. IllumiCase, which is a startup that provides a smartphone case, which actually recently got a provisional patent that has a light coming out of the back. That is actually the only B2C product that we've had actually in the last 9 months come out of Launchpad. We've got Hunt Butler, which I'm presuming a lot of you have heard about. They are basically the Airbnb of hunting land. We have Level Up Football, which provides premium content football videos for football coaches. So he's got NFL player shooting videos. We have Leaguer, which is an esports, competitive sports video game portal. Intern Betas, and what Intern Betas does is they actually match up students to startups. So startups are obviously, tend not to be flush with cash, and students can get some really great hands-on experience and develop a breadth of knowledge in a hurry. And then we have infrastructure inspectors, and this also, Lucas also recently got a provisional patent on his technology, which is an arm that you attach to a drone, and you can fly it up to bridges and water towers and wind turbines and do inspections versus someone hanging off a rope and unfortunately sometimes falling off, as you can imagine. So if you'd like to learn more about the Launchpad program, a little plug there, uwwlaunchpad.org, and then obviously on Twitter at uwwlaunchpad. I'm going to try speeding up here. The Collegiate Entrepreneurs organization, which Chotan referred to and Dugan referred to, we have a national convention. We had 2 students that did really well. Alec Turnell was the CEO Student Entrepreneur of the Year. We have Derek Francis from Hunt Butler. He took 3rd out of 130 students. The chapter took best social media presence in the country. So the students are doing great things. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about CEO, uwwceo.com, Twitter, uwwceo, and then Facebook. So 32 seconds over on time, sorry. So the
gist of our story is students are starting organizations and have the opportunity to start their organizations in greater numbers. Now more than any other time, there's resources available in the university to allow you to do that. There are resources outside the university, and we have created a bridge between the inside and the outside in such a way as to help you to take your idea to change the world. Doesn't have to be for-profit, can be not-for-profit.
Right.
And we're just as excited about both. We're ready to answer some questions you might have about entrepreneurship.
So if you have questions,
Yep.
Zach's coming around Mike.
Thank you for your time, gentlemen. I just had a quick question. Would you guys argue that the entrepreneurial spirit in the United States is more alive than ever in our history?
I mean, Dave can answer for himself. I think the entrepreneurial spirit has always been present in the United States. I think it's a part of our national character. And I think that, there's always been, rates of new business startup. But it's only until relatively recently that there have been sort of institutionalized resources where the nation understands that universities are sort of an engine for growth for that, and it's sort of changed the character of the university.
Yeah, the other thing I would add is I think more than ever before, there's a science behind it, right? So whether it's in Chotan's class and developing a business model canvas and developing business plans and having students go into national, pitch competitions, this scientific approach is actually increasing the likelihood of success and obviously enhancing the educational opportunities as well.
The best model is architecture. If you look at how architects are socialized, they are presented with successively more challenging design problems, and designing a new business is effectively a design problem. And so some of it is the experience in sort of wrestling around, immersing yourself in that problem, as well as just learning some intellectual principles.
We have time for one more question, or do we need to move on?
I think you have time for one.
Okay, one more question.
How do students get into the Launchpad? Can anybody just join it? And then, as a follow-up, how does the Whitewater Innovation Center play into the help of the Launchpad?
Okay, so two-part question. So traditionally what we've seen is business school students applying for Launchpad, but we've had 2 MA-GED majors apply recently. We're actually reaching out to computer science, and so we have computer science majors that don't want to just be part of a team, because a lot of the startups that come to us tend to be tech-based startups. So we're reaching out to that college as well, and Center of the Arts and other colleges. So we're really trying to bring the ecosystem together. There's some institutions that the colleges tend to operate in silos and don't collaborate. We're really trying to make sure we do have collaboration. One of the fantastic things that you talked about too that is a really amazing opportunity is the Whitewater Innovation Center. So students actually get office space and get to collaborate with other regional faculty startups at the Whitewater Innovation Center, which you and Mark do a tremendous job of managing, by the way. So.
And one more piece of that is to end up in the Launchpad, there's a couple of different ways in. One is if we have a student who wins a competition, either in the university or places well outside the university, that's considered a kind of vetting of that idea. If somebody else likes it, we take their opinion as very strong, and it plays a very strong role in allowing them to come in. But also, if someone does extremely well in a class, they can have a way in. Or third, they can pitch us. They can contact us, and we really look forward to you pitching your ideas. Right? You can change the world, and we'll help you do it.
All right. Thank you.
What a way to start, right? It's all about entrepreneurship on campus. So we'll stay with that theme. Our next speaker is Megan Matthews. Megan's background is in bringing arts and business together. So she works with the College of Arts and Communication, teaching nonprofit arts management. And her passion is all about creative enterprise programming. That's what she's about. So I asked her, I said, can you tell me something a little bit quirky about you? She said, I am getting to become a fan of Doctor Who, right? That's the piece you want to kind of throw out there. But your passion is about bringing the worlds of art and business together. Just going to share a small kind of a story with you, which I know she and I relate to and we talk about. There was a little girl in a classroom painting away. So it's a class where they're all painting and drawing, and she's sitting in the back and just drawing away furiously. And the teacher looks around the classroom and says, "This girl's never engaged. What is she doing?" So she walked up and asked the student, the little girl who's drawing away, says, "What are you drawing?" She says, "I'm drawing a picture of God." And the teacher said, "But no one knows what God looks like." Her response was, "They will in a minute." Right? So that's something which we share all the time about how creative people can be, and to bring creative and business together. To tell you more about it, Megan Matthews.
So I had to share the Doctor Who thing because my 15-year-old daughter, she's been introducing me to Doctor Who, and I'm kind of embarrassed to admit it, but she'll be glad to know that I shouted it out to everybody in the world. As Shotan said, Megan Matthews, and I teach arts management classes, I teach business management classes, and I have been working for 20 years with creatives, artists, business people, community activists, politicians. My passion has been trying to bring all these folks together. Because what I've found is that actually they're not that different, right? And I'll talk about that in a second. But you can ask, why do I care that artists are at the table when a new product is being developed? Or you can ask, why do I care that creatives are at the table when a community is developing a new economic development strategy? Why do I care that artists think about earned income and revenue and the consumer and how to distribute their product? Because having worked in this field for 20 years, I know that the arts help people think about things in a different way. They help people relate to someone unlike them. They help people respond to change in an effective and productive way. Businesses help people have decent, productive lives. They give them money to buy houses and buy clothes for their kids. When businesses run well, they can make a significant change and improvement in the community. That's why I care both sides of this world. Both sides, the arts and the business, people want to make a living, to be happy, to be healthy, to make change, to impact their world positively. They just go about it in different ways. And when we work together on this, we're better together. So let me give you some examples of where businesses have brought in creatives to work with them. For instance, Hallmark, greeting cards, Hallmark. What I found out is that they actually have what they call Hallmarket, where their employees that create artwork outside of their business lives, they actually allow them a place to sell the artwork to whomever is interested, because they're recognizing that their employees have this creative side to them that needs to be recognized. They also have a 6-month sabbatical for creative employees. Can you imagine? Just think about this. Being paid for 6 months to go be creative. And some of you, but the thing is, creative, there isn't just one way to do it. I mean, some people say, I couldn't even think of what I would do with that 6 months. I'm going to talk to you in a minute about how you might walk through that process. But Hallmark recognizes that their students, their employees need to have creativity. The Guthrie Theater, Minneapolis, they work with lawyers on improv techniques for the courtroom. Can you not imagine lawyers needing to be able to do improv, like on the moment, being able to respond to something they didn't expect? So theaters, the Guthrie Theater in particular, goes in and works with them to help them do this better. They use staged readings. They use where they don't have to act it out, but they work with lawyers and people in the law profession to work through complex legal issues. You talk about the Kohler Company right here in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. They've got an arts and technology program where they bring in artists from all over the world for up to 6 months, and they give these artists access to everything, right? Artists can use all the foundry work, all the processes, all the tools, and artists have been able to create work that has been basically distributed all over the country. The cool thing is, it's not just about the artists benefiting from this. The community, Sheboygan, the artists go out into the community, and they work with the John Michael Kohler Arts Center, providing programming and education opportunities for people in the creative arts. They go into the schools and they work with students in creativity and processes and training them in things. So both people benefit from this. We've got the Wagner Company in Milwaukee. I love this story. This is Christine Harris is a colleague of mine, and she tells a story all the time, but she's working on creative industries in the Milwaukee area. And the Wagner Company, not unusually, they had artists who had to have a second job because they had not figured out the whole income stream thing, and so they had to figure out how to make a living. And Christine talks about the fact that these artists worked for the Wagner Company just doing their regular job. They saw scrap metal all over the floor, and they said, could we take that and make stuff with it? And the Wagner Company, being wise, said, well, sure, okay. Do you know what has happened is that those artists have created a whole new product stream for the Wagner Company, right? They've created a whole new product that they can sell. And the artists are using their creative gifts and the talents and the things that they've used 30 years of their life to develop to help the business do better. And they get to do something that's very important to them. Doctors, another example. Doctors, did you know, I think this is so cool. Did you know that doctors actually, in their training, many schools have doctors go look at visual art to develop their critical and analytical observation skills? They make them go look at this art because when you've got visual art, you don't have like the nonverbals, right? I mean, I guess you have all the nonverbals, but you don't have movement and you don't have words and you don't have all the rest of this. So they have doctors go observe, and what it does is that when they work with a patient, they're better at figuring out how a patient is feeling and thinking and reacting to a situation just by observing versus having to do more tests, which saves money and is less invasive. So I think that's a great example of using the arts to help people do their jobs better. And finally, the last example, the worm farm. Okay, has anyone heard of the worm farm? You've been there, right? Okay, you gotta go. This is so cool. The Worm Farm Institute in Reedsburg, Wisconsin, it was basically a couple of artists bought a dairy farm up in the Sauk County, and they have two things I wanna talk about. The Fermentation Fest and the Farm Art Detour. Fermentation Fest is where they do all things about fermentation and culture. So they take the agriculture, they take the local community, they create this whole festival that has taste testings and people learn how to ferment things, I don't even know, sauerkraut and things like that. But the thing is, they bring people into the community. They bring money into the community, people come and spend money, they find out more about the culture, the farmers do better, local food providers do better, it's better for everybody. And then they've also got this Farm Art Detour, which you need to go 50 miles in the middle of beautiful Sauk County, where they have public art in the middle of nowhere. Like artists will go do these installations. Farmers, okay, you know those long white things that they put in the fields where the hay is over the winter, right? Farmers will paint these things in whatever shape that they, whatever thing they want, and people will go through and tour. They have pasture performances where they have concertos in the middle of a pasture. They have roadside signs. Oh, and the last thing about this, they've got these really cool, they call them roadside culture food stands, where artists create food stands that sell art and culture, but they're beautiful. And they can get a sense of the history and the culture of that area. It's amazing, and you really need to go. Okay, so there's enough of that. So then we talk about this. So how do you can see that I'm enthusiastic, and I say, so how do you create a space for creativity? One, be intentional. When you're in a business, and you're a business manager, and you're making decisions about what to include in this time for your employees, you gotta make space for creativity. Be intentional about it. Gene Chenoweth was talking about, with me earlier about thinking positively. One thing I talk about in my class is that people spend 90% of their time figuring out what went wrong and who to blame, and 10% of their time about figuring out what's possible and what to do about it. And I say that in the creative process, you need to flip that. You need to go, 90% of your time needs to be spent, what's possible and how do we make that happen? And 10% going, okay, that didn't work so great, what do we need to do about it? Think yes and rule. Improv, theater, basically any idea, when you're in a brainstorming session, any idea you have, the only response is yes and. I have this idea, in class, I had a student, I have this idea, I want to have underground tubes for travel between Whitewater and Janesville because I hate driving on the roads in the winter. Okay, all the buts start coming, going, oh, that's blah, blah, impractical, whatever. But there was no yes buts, it was all yes ands in that class. And so the next thing was, you know what? We could put news along the side of those tubes and so we could get all sorts of advertising income. I mean, think about it. If we'd spent time on was the yes but, we would never have thought about those things. Listening is a big part of the creative process. Big talkers like me, It's a skill I have to learn and practice intentionally. Also, bring creatives in early. Oftentimes, businesses tend to go, hey, you know what, let's create this thing and then we'll bring the creatives in to do it. Oh, I don't know, a logo or something. Bring them in early. Bring people in to do the creative process at the beginning of the process. They'll have more passion about it, they'll have a commitment to it, and they understand the creative process. Everybody will be better. So, creative entrepreneurship. It's like a thing, right? What I want to say about that is that sometimes people, artists, creatives, don't tend to think of themselves as entrepreneurs. I say they have a different purpose for entrepreneurship. They're not about scalability, building a big business, and moving on. They're about, I've got this thing in my soul that I must create, and I want to put it out there, which can be very frustrating for people who have the entrepreneurial mindset, like, okay, let's figure out how to distribute this and make it cheaper and all that. So you need to understand that when you're working with arts entrepreneurs, their goal in doing this is different. And that's okay, it's just different. But where we're together, where we're the same, is that arts entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurship and arts entrepreneurship and business and creativity, there's a process. It's like a loop. Right? So in order to sell a product, you need both the product and the customer, right? Without them, you don't have the process. In theater, you have the same kind of process. I have a gentleman, a friend who runs the Arts Entrepreneurship Program down in Southern Methodist University. His name is Jim Hart. He has an MFA in theater from Yale, so he knows his deal, right? He basically talks about the fact that you need to have both audience and artists and theater people to have the whole creative process. And so if that's the case, why can artists not use their consumer as a part of the process? Why do artists think that that can't be a part of their process? And that's what I talk to my artists about it when I'm talking about arts entrepreneurship, is that we're really very similar. We have this an inspirational process and we work together. Okay, so why do I believe that arts and business are better together? I've gone through and told you a lot about it, but let me end with this. I believe that artists and business, when we work together, we create better products, we create stronger communities, we create better opportunities, we create more ability to adjust to the world around us, and I believe we're better together. Thanks.
I know, Megan, I know the Kohler company brings in artists purposefully, like I think for a year, like ceramic artists to work in their business. Are there other models out there where businesses actually bring in intentionally an artist for a year? Are there examples of that?
You know, I don't know of an example that I can throw at you right this minute, but what I can tell you is there's a national initiative called Arts and Business Partnerships where they do a lot of investigating on how arts and business work together. So this minute, I can't come up with an example, but that doesn't mean there is one. And I can when I get my newsletter all the time, they have some phenomenal examples of arts and business working together in unique and interesting ways. You know, basically sometimes arts businesses will have a band, like employee bands, and they have these, you know, playoffs, that kind of a thing. And it's to build relationships and to get people to feel like they're a team and to know that, wow, I have this whole other side to me that they actually appreciate. So, there you go. Anything else? I was making a joke about having you all do interpretive dance. You ready? No? Okay. Thank you very much.
Well, there's creativity and business coming together in the form of entrepreneurship, in forms of all kinds of different programs. You can see how passionate Megan is about that. And thank you again, Megan, for doing that. Our next presentation is taking you a slightly different direction. We're going to talk about job safety, productivity, and satisfaction. Those are the three things that the next speaker builds on. He is the youngest recipient of National Safety Educator Award in 2012, and he teaches here at Whitewater in the College of Business. So this program came together and is part of our College of Business building. You'll meet our colleagues here. We work with them, and Todd Lucien is going to tell you about the three constraints of safety, productivity, and job satisfaction. Todd's passion is about home remodeling. That's what he likes to do. And I told him that as soon as this is over, I'm going to sign him up to help me with some work in summer. But for now, you get to hear him talk about safety in workplace.
When you hear the term occupational safety and health, I'm curious what comes to mind. Probably OSHA, compliance, other unpleasantries in the workplace. And that's a very almost narrow and limiting view. And so what I'm going to do over the next 10 minutes is try to convince you that there is a lot of potential, untapped potential, if we practice safety properly. Every year, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics publishes reports on where fatalities occur, the causes of fatalities, and the same with the non-fatal injury and illnesses. And we study that here, and businesses look at this. The problem is, I think it unfairly stereotypes certain industries or causes us to sort of blanket and just focus on certain things. I started my career as a compliance officer with OSHA. That's how I cut my teeth in safety. And so what I'm going to be sharing with you today comes from a culmination of over 20 years of experience, studies, research. And this one figure here from the report is interesting because it kind of encapsulates a lot of things. That when I was a compliance officer, I was doing enforcement work. But I was hearing and I was listening to the workers, listening to management, and I noticed things. That there's more like these social aspects of an organization, or the relationships, we'll say relationships. And that's what seemed to be more indicative of a safe workplace than all the compliance and programs and rules and all this stuff. And as you'll see here, smaller companies have much lower accident rates than bigger companies. They don't have the resources. They probably don't even have a safety professional working for them. Why is that? Well, I noticed that it was people trusted each other. They talked to each other. They knew how to work around the constraints of work or have the control or autonomy to redesign their own work to mitigate the hazards that are there. In 2009, I was lucky enough to be asked to be that lead safety volunteer for the show Extreme Makeover Home Edition. So up in northern Wisconsin, I was called on a Friday afternoon. And they said, we've been calling around. You were recommended. Of course, I'm a professor, so I'm sitting around, right? Just kidding. No, I wasn't. But I said, sure, I'll help out. What do I have to do? They said, well, on Monday, we're going to be knocking on the family's door, and you need to supply 2 safety professionals on site 24/7 for that week. Okay, lucky I have a lot of friends. I tapped into my resources. Within 72 hours, I had a full schedule of safety professionals who are going to be on site at all times. Now, what's interesting about this is that we didn't come in and go, okay, here are the OSHA standards, follow them. What we did is, I set up some principles. Those principles being, let's help people. We're not going to force people to do this. We're going to help people. Somebody doesn't have head protection, we're going to bring it to them. Somebody needs help lifting something, we're going to help lift. But more importantly is we had to protect the non-skilled volunteers on site. The people who clamored to be on a TV show, they were our biggest hazard. And so we started a training program for them. And we had them only go on site when they are mentored or supervised by one of the experts, the people who were construction folk volunteering. And we were very successful with this. And the other thing I did is I instituted a journal, so that each group that handed off to the next group saw what the previous group did, understood the training, maybe things they found, and it actually evolved as it went through. And you have to do that with a construction site because the construction site evolves. And so we were very successful, and we provided this family with a wonderful new home, which they gratefully accepted. What I want to share with you now is 7 principles, or I call my philosophy on safety. And I think it really will give you insight into how I practice, how I teach, and how I research safety. A very, I don't even call it new, but an innovative look at it. Safety is an attribute of work, and what I mean by that is I picture everything as a system. So there's elements that are interacting with each other, and it's complex. And if we oversimplify a complex issue, we're not going to solve it. We're going to be wrong. No offense to Occam. No, okay, wow, flat. But it all started really with the Industrial Revolution. Industrial Revolution gave birth to the work organization. People working together for a specific purpose, but there's a lot of complexities there. We had new forms of technology, and we still have new forms of technology. We have new chemicals. We have new issues. And how are we allowing the individuals who are hired to do specific tasks? Do we give them the tools, the knowledge in order to be successful? That they can ask for help when they need it, when they can take time to go get the right tool, or to control their own work environment so they can mitigate whatever hazards are there or avoid the exposure. And so if we take safety out of work, if we take it out of the design of work, unmoor it from that, we're going to be unsuccessful. And it's going to make the job not as fun. And it's going to make our relationships, it's going to destroy them, and we're not going to communicate. And then all things go mad, not just safety. I said bad, not mad. Sorry about that. I believe all workers want to do a good job, at least initially when they're first hired. The problem is if we don't give them the opportunity to get some satisfaction, to feel appreciated for the work they do, or if we don't give them an opportunity to succeed, we're not going to achieve that. And I believe safety is linked to people being able to do a good job. And so therefore, if I study work, I study the job itself. But not just that. What's their relationship with coworkers? What's the relationship with their supervisor? How often do they see top management? All these things are very critical to their ability to understand their job completely, to appreciate what they do, to be proud that they're getting something done, and they're doing it in a safe manner. Because you can get something done safely or unsafely. And if safety is removed, and it's incongruent to the work rule, what are workers going to choose? What are supervisors going to choose? They're there to get the work done. If safety's not part of that, well, so be it. All people want to be treated fairly. That's fairly consistent. I know there are theory out there, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You've probably heard of that. B.F. Skinner's ABC model. Fine, good. I believe Adams' equity theory explains more why people change their attitude and behavior and do certain things than anything else. You've heard of a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. That's the foundation of it. Back in the 60s, Adams came up with that. It's been extended in the 80s by Greenberg to organizational justice. If we perceive injustice or unfairness, that greatly affects us and our relationships at our workplace, which in turn affects our communication in the workplace, which in turn allows things to go bad very quickly if we don't do something about it. People do not try to get hurt. They're trying to get a job done. And if we don't consider all aspects of the job, which could lead to exposure, I know you guys are starting to see the pictures, and it happens. But they don't intend to get hurt. Going back to fairness, we have this inert desire. It's called the fundamental attribution error. That when we see someone get hurt, we blame them. We do that. But when you're the one who got hurt, you can usually identify external factors that led to it. That's what I'm talking about. The design of work, external factors that are complex and interacting. But if we blame someone and they got hurt because they're trying to do a good job, and safety is not there, and we blame them, that really affects them. That affects the entire social fabric of an organization, and that's something I've studied. If I had more time, I would definitely share all that with you, but believe me, people do not want to get hurt. We need to make them so they can do their job successfully and really be excited about what they're doing, but do it in a safe manner as well. If we assume that all workers have everything they need to get their job done successfully, we're wrong. We need everybody to be successful. If not, then somebody has to make up for it. Organizations are only successful as the success of each individual. That's how I approach safety. Sounds different, doesn't it? It is. I want everybody to be able to get their job done, because nothing is static. Things change day in and day out. We have new workers coming in. We have new technology coming in. It's a constant effort to understand what may be preventing someone from being successful or affects some relationship within an organization, because all that affects safety, affects productivity, affects satisfaction. I'm highly analytical. I measure a lot of things. And by doing so, and by looking at the work system itself, I can understand safety from multiple factions. I'm not just going to justify a change in the work because OSHA might come in and cite it. No, that's not a good justification. I can link it to productivity. I can link it to savings. If someone gets hurt, that's going to slow things down. That's going to affect mindset of people. One example, but this is throughout my entire life. When my kids see a commercial on a new toy, they're like, "Daddy, we want that." I'm like, "Here, fill out this form here about what you think the quality will be, how much you'll play with it, and I'll see if I can cost justify it." You know you can make kids like old toys by repurposing them as Christmas gifts? Just saying. Not Santa, but Christmas gifts. They don't know. I am concerned by a heightened attention to people wanting to adopt what other companies are doing because they're successful. I believe it's the journey we go on, it's the techniques that we replicate every day with a focus on improving the work, improving the success of the individual, which ultimately creates a functional safety program. But too often people are trying to buy it, the magic pill, the silver bullet. I'm saying right here and now, we can't buy a safety program. We can't say, oh, there's a safe organization and mimic what they do, because we will fail. We have to go through a journey in order to get there. So, almost ending on time, what I want to share with all of you, we are new to the business school. We are the envy of a lot of safety degree programs around the US. There is enormous potential here. I've got several student groups out serving companies right now, building their safety program from the roots up. We've got interns who we've been very lucky with the number of offers. We have interns going out before they're doing their capstone. This summer, I've got a lot of non-safety students taking my intro safety course. So I really want UW-Whitewater to be the beacon of southern Wisconsin for class projects, for practical research, for interns. And I see more and more how safety can actually be improving or providing management students, human resource students. By the way, there's a lot of potential for human resource students who have a safety background. I'm telling you, I get people contact me with job offers all the time. I just don't know anybody yet. But the idea is we should be the next generation that is going to really serve the safety field. Because right now, we can do a lot better. And I think here at Whitewater, we can offer that to, our community. Any questions?
Yes. Todd, thank you.
Yeah.
You talked about smaller companies having less injuries and so on, and larger companies having more, and your explanation was that people are more likely to trust each other in smaller companies. Or are smaller companies doing maybe safer things? I'm just curious why, and you're right, I mean, larger companies have teams of lawyers to fight for them and so on, and you'd think that they would have better records. So I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, I actually observed it when I was doing compliance work, that I was doing an inspection at this small machine shop, very small. They had no safety person. The owner was the accountant, was HR, was safety and everything. No programs. As a compliance officer, I'm like, ching, 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 I'm gonna get them all. But when I went around and started meeting the workers and talking to them, the workers knew where the hazards were, but they were able to work around them. And it was because they trusted each other and they communicated that no injuries had occurred within a 12-year span of this company. Whereas from a compliance perspective, I was stumped. And it was actually that experience that drove me to go to grad school, to study the social sciences and get advanced degrees in industrial engineering. So I really believe in this.
I have a question for you.
Yeah, sure.
Do you think companies have made a leap to taking this proactively, or are they much more still based on compliance and doing it out of compliance? Or do you think that movement has started where they're aware and they're actually doing this proactively?
I think we could do more to be proactive. I think we are moving beyond compliance for the most part. But I don't think we fully understand the potential. There's so much more there, which is why, I really need to get out there and present this more and publish more on it, because when I talk to people, they're like, yes, this is exactly what we need to do. And it actually makes things easier, and you have more successes, more benefits. It's just, we're at a crossroads right now, the safety field. I'm actually on a national committee right now, task force, that we're trying to redefine what safety is and what we can offer to companies. And so there's going to be a lot of changes within the next decade, but I see it as being what I just presented just now.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay? Oh.
One more question.
So you talked about the larger companies typically not being as safe. Are there examples of large companies that you found in your research that are safer, and is it because they're incorporating the kind of things you're talking about that the smaller companies do sort of naturally?
I wouldn't say naturally. I think it takes a conscious effort to try and get people, especially within the work environment, to trust each other. Because we unintentionally treat people unsafe. We do it all the time. And that inhibits the communication. But the safety professional has the ability to go in and find where that stuff is. I've got several survey instruments that I use to detect where there are these miscommunications, distrust, resentment, because that's what we call it, culture, climate, stuff like that. We're not going to get into it. Big organizations can achieve it, definitely. But it does take a lot of work, because as you grow in size, the complexities grow. And you may have to institute forms of technology to supplant the absence of face-to-face interaction. Okay? Does that answer? Yeah. Great. Thank you. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So this next guy is a dear friend, and we have traveled across the world together. Did we also fight the lion barehanded, or was that us, or maybe not, maybe not, maybe not. But we did travel across the world together and stuff. I grew up in an Indian family in India, speaking a language called Bengali, which is one of the languages in India. He grew up in an Indian family speaking French. I'll let you ask that question at the end of his presentation as to how that happened. He's the director of our Doctorate of Business Administration program. He's got a textbook in international business that's used by numerous schools. He's a heck of a guy. He's very, very big on ethics. One of the fun questions we go back and forth is, what would you be willing to do for $1 million? Think about that. So we kind of talk about that. And also we're trying very hard over the next year not to stink at golf, and we're doing that together. My dear friend, Praveen Parbatia.
All right, I made it. I told myself if I made it to TED Talks, I've done it. This is the next best alternative. So great way to, and this week has just been incredible. You know, I got my 15-year pin a few days ago. Yesterday I was recognized for the research nomination, so it's just a fantastic week. And in terms of thinking about what to talk for this, I thought, okay, what are my interests? I like international management. Should I talk about international management issues? We all know that it's important, right? I mean, who wants to hear that we need to accept cultural differences, we need to adapt? So I said that doesn't make much sense. The next thing is business ethics. That's my huge other academic love, if you will. But again, do I need to tell you that you should be honest at work? Do we need to say that companies should be ethical? I don't think so. Let's get to, that's my name really big. Let's get a little bit to what I want to talk about today. I think, like most of you, reading is something that, you know, provides some kind of food for the human soul, you know. And here I have a few of the list of books that I've read that to some degree have helped me understand my kind of context in the US. When you think of yourself being an immigrant and what you go through, you do see that there's so much work out there, and you see that in England, you see that in the US. And so, you know, I'm not going to say I'm an avid reader. I would lie to you if I say that. I do it when I can. We all have busy lives. But at different points in my life, it has been very useful to get into a book. You have a stressful day, you go home, take a book, just kind of lay down on the couch and get into it, and you're in a different world. And so I thought that would be something that would be interesting. And so if I want to say that we should read, then the big question is, you know, are people reading or not? So then I thought, you know, I should get into what the research shows, you know, what are the surveys saying about how much people are reading and so on. So, and one of the most interesting report that came out was the one done by the National Endowment of the Arts. So I found the 2004 report. When I read that, bad news. People were not reading, and and especially younger kids were not reading and so on. So then I thought, yes, we do need to talk about it. But then when I looked at the most recent report, as you can see, things are looking better. The younger generations are reading more now, and I think things like Harry Potter and all the other things are definitely helping. And if you look across the different, by the way, these are actual book titles. So if you look at percentage of people who are reading literature and literature reading by education levels and so on, we do see that things are not so bad. The only thing is this has been published, this survey was done in 2008, so hopefully a new one will come out. So then I said, okay, we need to talk about it. This is an issue, and how many of you read some sort of literary type of work? Okay, so this is kind of half of the people that we see here, right? So that's good, and I guess I am preaching to the choir, so even better. But so then I also thought, in terms of benefits, what types of benefits can we think of? And my kind of focus was looking at it from like a workplace perspective. What do you get from reading? How does it help you? And I think in many ways is kind of a good tie-in with what Megan Matthews talked about earlier, this thing about creativity at the workplace and so on. So you've seen this. They had an ad about the book. That's the next big thing, It's unlimited battery life, instant loading, anti-glare. You can even read it in the sunlight. So it's quite amazing. And, what are the benefits of reading then? So reading, the sound and the fury for me was one of the hardest things I had ever done. I had not done it. So I went to school in Mauritius, and the high school curriculum there's different. And fighting through that book, it's one, and I started Peace and War, by the way, and I abandoned that because I can't remember that many Russian names, But, so that mental stimulation, I think, is really interesting. Once you read something complex, you feel like you can do anything. Until I try golf, then I find out that I should keep reading, So there's the mental stimulation for sure. And stress reduction, definitely. How many times have you had a bad day at work and you go home and the book is that kind of solace for you? You go to a different world. So, and then the kind of knowledge base you develop, the inner peace. And of course, now I find myself using words like articulating, and that's because I read, It just didn't happen by chance. No, I'm just kidding. And also better insights into society you're in. So I liked a lot of the works of Steinbeck, but I had never read Grapes of Wrath, and I've been kind of going through it. And you can get such amazing insights in terms of, recession and maybe what we are seeing right now to some degree, and the hardships people go through. So these are just personal benefits. But like I was saying earlier, I was interested in what happens at work. And I have a few more suggestions. So again, anyone can be cool, but these takes work, and does God speak through cats? My favorite is Everything I Want to Do is Illegal. And that's a children's book, by the way. But, what are the benefits of reading at work? So first thing is, gives context for what you're doing. So then being the social scientist, I got into the research, and they looked at comparing people who read versus who didn't read, and found that they were much more comfortable with ambiguity. If you think of our workplace situation today, everything is so complex. If you can understand ambiguity and the decisions are going to be better. You don't have to, what is known as satisfy. You don't have to stop at something that doesn't give the full satisfaction that you need. And also more empathy for others. You get to see other people's viewpoints. You know, you get to be in other people's shoes. You get to understand where they're coming from. And also for me, it's you know, in doing this, I also surveyed a few colleagues and so on, and that empathy came back several times, where at work, if you're sitting together and you're reading the same book and you're talking about it, you develop some bond, you know, and if you think about how can we make people get along better, reading something, and also you get an understanding of other people's mind. And I feel that clock like this. Is there going to be some music or do I have to? Okay. So anyways, and also people have less cognitive closure. So earlier we talked about this idea of creativity and so on. You open your minds to other perspectives, other avenues, you know, and I don't know how that gets done directly. I can't articulate it, but it does happen. So, and you know, and I thought, big deal. I tell you to read, what is the relevance for what you're doing? And when we look at the latest skills that the National Association of Colleges and Employees survey say, all of these things, ability to work in a team structure, ability to make decisions, ability to communicate, ability to analyze quantitative data, proficiency. You know, you look at the list of 10 things, 8 of those you need to be able to read. Reading helps you get these things. So I have 5 more seconds. Read. And before I forget, the Chancellor's Literary Award, fabulous event goes on campus every year. And you know, this year, Nicholas Butler is coming and his book, Shotgun Love Songs, is amazing, and the award is actually for writers of the Midwest, so please do participate in it. They always come. Last year we had Deborah Blum, fabulous people. Thank you, and questions.
Hours of this on our flight to India.
That's right. So, thank you. I thought I was reading.
No, that was great. Questions?
What are you reading?
You know, right now I'm reading Nothing to Envy, which is fiction, nonfiction, and it's about North Korean society, and it's very interesting, by Barbara Demick. And also I'm trying to finish Grapes of Wrath. And when I was researching this too about immigrant, I found a nice one I would be interested to read about is Blue Boy by an Indian author, you know. So it's one of those immigrant. Yep. Other questions? So don't forget about Business Ethics Week and also the Chancellor's Literary Award. Thank you. Thank you.
He did talk about communication, teamwork as being a part of something that you get out of books and something that's important. Our next presenter is actually going to talk a lot about that. So for this presentation, I would tell you to do something that my son taught me that you should actually tell the people who are listening, is pretend that you're getting on a roller coaster and strap on the safety belts. Because Carol Scavati is unbelievable. I took her a project in 2005 about working with some students in Germany. She's taken that program, put it over the top, and now you have this amazing collaborative work that's going on between our universities. She did promise me that if we hum a tune together, she'll come dancing in onto the stage. And we picked CCR's right around the corner, right? So, ding, 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 ding. All right, here's Carol Scavati.
Greetings, greetings. Thank you. Thank you. Boy, what a great group of sessions. And it seems like everything tied into what I'm going to talk to you about today. Collaboration. It's a real passion of mine. Actually, I got to tell you something. Academia is a second career for me. I actually spent about 25 years in international business, international marketing. So this gives me the opportunity to kind of take my passion from my past to my passion of the present and take it into the future. So, what's the most valuable asset that a firm has? Some people might say it's the technology that it has, the equipment, it might be the infrastructure, it might be the processes. Not even close. The most valuable asset that a firm has is its people. I know that's kind of sacrilegious for a marketing professor to talk about human resources, but it's true. When people get together, when people collaborate, amazing things can happen. They can solve the toughest problems. They can come up with the most creative ideas, new products, new services. Why, when they get together and it works, it's magic. It's absolutely magic. Now, how does this dovetail into what I do? Well, I told you, my passion is international. And we have folks around the globe. Even in our own institution, we are connected to so many different schools, so many different organizations all over the world. And we have the opportunity to learn with them, to work with them, to make something better. Now, the technology is there, and the technology is amazingly stable. Certainly better than it's been in the past. When I first did my first multicultural virtual team, 1983, I was president of the Danish phone company, and it was a good thing that I was the president of a telecommunications company because the technology that we used cost millions and millions of dollars. Now, it's at our fingertips. Our laptops, our phones can connect us with people all over the world. The collaborative platforms that are available to us, many of which are no charge. So, what do we need to do? Well, what the heck? Let's just plug everybody in, and whether you're in Siberia or Sydney or Sacramento, you can connect and you can collaborate. Think about it. Just think about it. The greatest minds of an organization, location is no longer an issue because everybody, regardless of where they are, they can collaborate with each other. Man, it sounds like utopia, doesn't it? Outstanding. So, it's been going on for a long time. What typically happens when we have people from different cultures collaborate using these virtual technologies? Boom! More times than not, it's a disappointment. And many times, it's an out-and-out failure. You know, it would be so easy if we didn't have to deal with those people. People just kind of muck it up. But the reality is that it's people that make it work. Interesting study was published in 2009 looking at how the degree of distribution of team members impacted team performance. When you have the opportunity to be face-to-face, person-to-person, productivity is pretty good. But just move them around the building, move them to a different site, move them to a different city, move them to a different country, move them to a different continent. And you can see how the effectiveness and the efficiencies of the team decrease. So here we are, a paradox. We have all this great technology, and we just can't figure out how to harness it. What are some of the problems that we run into? Well, one, the technical term of this is social loafing. But let's face it, we've all done this. When we're part of a group, sometimes we rely on the group members more than we should. We let somebody else do the work. But wait, what else do we do? If we're on a virtual conference call, oh, I see you guys smiling out there. I see those. You know that you do this stuff. You multitask. I must admit, I do too. I do too. Yeah, okay. True confessions. Yeah, we do other things. We're so easily distracted. But wait, there's one more thing we need to talk about. And that's the 800-pound gorilla in the room. I run into this every time I do one of these collaboration projects with our sister school in Germany. And that is this issue of culture. Now, on both sides of the Atlantic, our teams, our people, our students are relatively diverse. Not necessarily all English and American and English speakers as they're here, and they're certainly not all German there. So we have a tremendous amount of diversity in the teams that we work with our multicultural collaboration. And what do I hear? Well, from the American side, I hear, oh, those Germans, they are so bossy. They just think that they're responsible for everything and they're just going to take charge. And I'm not going to listen to them. And that's the guys. The Americans, what do they, the Germans, what do they think? Those Americans, they're so laid back, they're so lazy. They speak in tongues. They have expressions. And I have no idea what they mean. And they know. But we don't. Just one example of what this little thing called culture can mean to virtual teamwork. It's tough. When people don't speak the same language, when people aren't in the same time zones, it's really difficult to have successful collaboration, despite all the technology that we have. So how do we make these multicultural teams more effective? How do we make them work better together? There is a tremendous amount of advice out there. The research is loaded with it. Do the good stuff, don't do the bad stuff. Well, duh. Okay, I need to communicate. I need to listen. I need to be aware that somebody has a different culture. Whoopee. Tell me something I don't know. So let me share with you 3 pieces of advice for virtual teamwork that I've developed through the research that my team has been doing on this topic. The first thing deals with the organization and team complexion. This is actually the results of about 30 multicultural teams, student teams, that have worked on our German collaboration, German-US collaboration. And what we have found, now, one thing I should preface this with is that not all teams are created equal. So what that means is that there's differences in degrees of distribution. We saw that earlier in that research. Degrees of virtuality. Do they have a chance to get face-to-face, or are they doing their project completely virtual? Team familiarity. Do you know the people you're working with? Language, task complexity, a whole host of variables come into play when you're defining what a virtual team is. So, what we've actually found is that we can reduce what are called the fault lines, the us versus them, if we have a moderate degree of differences, cultural differences. So, 2 Americans, 2 Germans, a Norwegian and a Swede, a Chinese and a Korean. Put those on a team, and that team will have moderate moderate degree of heterogeneity, and it will function well. It will function well. But have all American or half Americans, half Germans, or everybody's from someplace else, they can't even figure out when they're going to make a phone call. So a moderate differences actually works best in teams. Another thing that has to happen at the team level is it has to develop its own culture. Everybody comes at it from their cultural perspective, their cultural bias, and you got to throw that away, and the team has to develop its own culture. When is it going to communicate? How is it going to communicate? Who is going to communicate to whom? When are things going to be done? Don't ask somebody from Brazil, tell me when you're going to get it done, because they're going to say soon. And soon may be tomorrow or next week, you just don't know. The third advice, and this deals with the individual. It's important to have a buddy, and this is something that we've recently instituted with our cross-border collaboration project. So what we have is an American student who is paired with a student in Germany. And we try to keep them as diverse as possible. We make them buddies. They are responsible for each other's work. If one disappears, we've got that guy from Greece that decides that it's Easter, and because it's Easter, he's going to disappear for 3 weeks. Well, that American buddy is going to know that the Greek student has disappeared and is going to cover for them. There's a lot more that we have to learn about virtual teamwork, but suffice to say, we have the opportunity to put the world in our hands. The technology is there, and we have the cultural sensitivity to be able to get the job done. If we develop hybrid cultures within teams, if we structure our teams correctly, and if those individuals are really dedicated to getting the job done. It's a great opportunity. It's all at our fingertips. Let's put the world in our hands. Thank you.
I was just wondering if you had recommendations for how, kind of practically speaking, how teams should go about developing that culture that you talked about.
Well, very good question. And in fact, one of the things that we do we have a very short period of time in which we need to complete our tasks. But despite that short amount of time to actually do the work, we dedicate 2 weeks right at the front end of the project so that the team members can actually start to get to know each other. You can't work with somebody you don't know. And it's nice to know something personal about them. So there has to be, even for the short-term projects, some amount of time where the team members get to know each other, and then, and only then, can you start to develop what we call our contract. We call it a contract because the Germans are involved. But it's a hybrid culture.
Thank you, Carol. Very interesting research. I actually read some studies comparing Asian versus American, like teams, virtual teams, and that sometimes Asian teams can have members that don't say much just because that's the kind of nature of the culture and so on, where they have good ideas, but Americans tend to just be so extrovert and so on. Do you ever find that? And
Absolutely.
do you have any solutions? What do you tell them?
As a matter of fact, yes, we do. There's definitely differences in the way that different nationalities interact in a team setting. And one of the things that we do to get everybody involved is there will be, during our 45-minute to an hour-long meeting, when we're doing virtual meetings, we actually have interactive touch points. So there might be some kind of an exercise where everybody is supposed to circle a picture that represents how they see themselves functioning in a team, and then spend 3 minutes, 4 minutes talking about it. The other thing, the buddy system gets everybody involved as well. So the quiet, the more reserved cultural background will have to speak up. And that hybrid culture actually promotes that as well.
Any other questions? I have one for you.
Oh, okay.
So you're working on the ultimate challenge, right? Cross-cultural teams,
yes.
Class projects. We hear lots of class projects which don't involve cross-cultural teams having challenges too. So some of your stuff applies to that, I'm assuming.
Oh, of course it does.
Correct.
I use it in my undergraduate classes, and they meet in a classroom.
Absolutely. And do you think that technology makes a difference? So for example, if you took your in-class projects here, where geographically they're not dispersed, and they were to use technology, do you think that that's an interesting piece of research? Do you have any thoughts on what could happen?
Ooh, that'd be cool.
Right.
That'd be really cool. We can try that next semester.
There we go.
Actually, yeah, I think it would be a very interesting experiment. We certainly have the baseline for various team projects that have been done over the years in class, and it'd be very interesting to
look into that.
Look into that. Cool. I hadn't really thought about that, but that's a good idea.
Yeah, it'll be a good comparison. I'm going to request actually all the speakers and the people who organized it, Kyle, Chris, Nick, come on up. I think you guys are terrific. So just to kind of round this off, so Carol, she's in the Department of Marketing, Fulbright scholar, and you got to hear her speak. Bill Dugan, Department of Management. Dave, your technical Department of Management, hardcore into entrepreneurship, correct? And then Megan teaches in the College of Arts and Communication. Praveen teaches not reading, correct? But in the Department of Management, and he oversees our new doctorate in business administration. And I'm going to get this right, Todd. Ready? The Department of Occupational and Environmental Safety and Health. Nailed it. Okay. All right. That's awesome. And our organizers who put this all together, Nick, Kyle, and Chris.